Hey everybody, it's Hajj and Contactee, and I have a friend with me. She's actually going by Matrix Red Pill, but she's on the Multidimensional Healing Channel on YouTube. Her name is Irene. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Iren, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so this is our first little joint podcast together. It was kind of a last minute thing, but Irene, would you like to tell everyone about yourself?
Okay. I created multidimensional healing. So I started remembering super soldier things when I was maybe around 22, way earlier than Max Spears and James Casbolt. And then I found them and I was like, hey, I'm not the only one that's remembering some strange things. I was first remembering more of emotional things like physical sensations, emotional traumas and stuff like that. And then as I was listening to them, I started to remember more like images and it started to become more detailed and stuff like that. When Max was still alive and James Casbolt was still talking, I did try to contact Carrie Cassidy, Miles Johnson, to try to also talk about what I know. But they kind of turned me down pretty rudely. I didn't know that Max and James had Facebooks. If I knew, I would have contacted them there. So I ended up not being able to really tell my story until like this year. I think I started this year. No, last year. I started last year, my channel, because I felt like a lot of people would benefit from that. And I called it multidimensional healing because I am basically healing from a lot of things. I use shadow work, which is basically going into your emotions and feeling them through, treating them like their energy and feeling them through until you replace them with something more positive, instead of denying and rejecting them. So I'm like clearing out a lot of like traumas basically from other lifetimes, other realities where I'm living right now. And and I'm going through stuff that are more dark than this lifetime. Um, so I guess my channel is kind of like more like a blog in a way, because I'm kind of just putting things that come to me, whatever memories, whatever I connect to, like different consciousnesses I connect to. Sometimes they're not even part of my soul, but I just basically tap into different things and just talk about it, and just whatever information I get, I put it on my channel. Um, I have been wanting to start kind of like Zoom meetings with people so we can talk about like our memories and tap into like emotional stuff, maybe heal some things. Even like just talking about things is very healing, like just getting the information out there for people to know what's happening in the higher dimensions is also really good for the general population to know about these things. There's a lot of people who are walking around right now and they also have versions of them, lifetimes of them in higher dimensions who are going through a lot of things and they just simply don't remember it. And as we become more fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional, they're going to start remembering things and they're going to be very lost. So this is kind of also where helping the future generations, the future, as people start to shift, more and more people start to shift, we're going to be helping them not be so confused and lost of what's going on with them. um, so I think that's a pretty important thing to do. So I think that kind of summarizes it.
So you were referring to your memories and the process that you go through to recover them. I'd like to get into that a little bit because that'll help others who are going through this. What I've been going through is I'll suddenly know something, either a name or something about myself. And then usually at that point, if it doesn't already happen, there's emotional memories that come with it. Emotional memories would be simply emotions that are connected to either an experience or an individual, such as if you meet somebody that you have a connection with from a past life, or maybe it's in one of these, it could either be a past life or it could be in, like in my case, there's been several that have been from a past life. If there was one person that I identified as not just being in a past life, but also being in one of these military super soldier programs at the White Sands base. Oops, I need to turn that off. I can get that to go off right yet. I'm gonna have to put up with that. I don't have time to turn it off and go through the settings, but anyway, yeah. So that's what I've been going through as well. And then after that, you'll start getting the fragments, which will show up. So it's a matter of, I guess it's just like amnesia. And I've got all kinds of crap coming in here. Okay. Anyway, I'd like to hear a little bit about how you've gone through this. So you're getting like emotional memories. Also, are you getting names of things that come up too, like names or locations or specific information? How does that come through for you?
Yeah, sometimes I get images. Sometimes I get a lot of sense of knowing. I just know things. I don't know how I know things, but I just know it. um, I had my number come in, like a piece of my number. I forgot it already. I did put it on my channel. My
Well, when you
number
say
that's
number,
in
what do you mean? Is that like a serial number for like for an altar, super soldier, something like
my
that?
super soldier number. Apparently I got like half of it come through. I forgot it now. Sometimes I get things come through and then I forget them, because it kind of comes through from the subconscious, and sometimes it doesn't stay in the conscious for a long time. That's why I put it things online, because sometimes I would get information and then forget it.
Yeah, that's happened to me. It's usually small things, but sometimes it could be something important, such as a name of something that comes through. And that's why it's always good to write it down or have a notepad handy or something where you can write it down with. I
Mhm.
usually pretty disorganized, so I'll write it on a piece of like scrap paper or napkin, and I'll pile it on my desk. And sometimes I lose it. Sometimes it'll come back to me. Have you met anybody from a past life existence, such as an extraterrestrial existence, or somebody that's been in the super soldier program? Because I think you said your husband was also in this.
My boyfriend.
Your boyfriend.
Yeah, my boyfriend, he's in the super soldier. He has different versions of him. We have had, I do know there's definitely one where we were together. And I was a higher rank than him, and I think I might have ended up sending him to die, became an order, and he died pretty painfully in that lifetime. Um, I'm still there. I'm still getting recycled. Like whenever I die, my soul gets put into a new body, and then I continue doing, because I'm like a pretty high rank. So I guess they recycle us.
Hey, what do you
He's
think
not there anymore.
is going to happen with you right now? This part, because obviously you, like myself, are a fragment of a higher being, and not just the one that's in the SSP or the super soldier programs like you're referring to. There is a higher version of yourself. So yeah, what do you think is going to happen with you, this particular version of you? Do you think they're going to recycle you, or do you think they're going to send that back to the higher self? That's something I've been wondering about. I don't have a definitive answer on.
It's up to me if I want to. My consciousness is strong enough that I can resist being put into places that I don't want to be. Like I can even leave this body if I really want to. I have almost left it before, but my spirit guides, I think it was my spirit guides. I'm not really sure who talked to me. But I had like kind of like a black screen when the of the talk. But they basically talked me out of leaving my body because I felt like I didn't really have much to do here, and I felt like I was kind of bored, which is something I still have a little bit of problem with. I'm
Were you sad
not
or
really
depressed
fine.
as well?
Huh?
I said, were you sad or depressed or just unhappy overall?
Yeah, I wasn't happy because I feel very bored here. Like in the higher dimensions, I did a lot more things. In the third dimension is a little bit too slow for me. And it sometimes it starts to really bother me. Like on an emotional level, it starts to really get to me.
So you're saying that you probably feel unfulfilled. Is that right?
Yeah, I feel very unfulfilled here.
Yeah, a lot of us do. It usually comes with a feeling of being trapped. Do you ever feel
Yeah,
that too?
sometimes, but I I do know now that I can leave this body if I really want to. It's not that hard to do.
Well, as long
Um,
as they're not going to suck you back into the recycling bin, because that's something that is a concern for a lot of people as to what
mhm,
happens after this. The main problem is your alters. You have parts of yourself, soul fragments that are still stuck in these programs.
mhm,
Um, what I know about myself, there was approximately, technically, there was 8 alters from the first incarnation here, which was, this is one of these things where I don't have the cognitive memory, I don't have the images, but I know things about myself that came from my subconscious. There's an emotional component to all of it, but not yet a cognitive component to it yet. But there is bits and pieces of fragments, but they're not. I have approximately 8 altars, with myself being one of them. And there was the first incarnation, which I came here whole instead of coming here as a fragment of myself, which is when your higher self stays in the ET body, wherever that may be, and volunteers to come here for a specific purpose. There's a lot of people that say you don't volunteer to come here. Well, those are the people here who were stuck in the system. Those who come here for an altruistic purpose, such as freeing humanity, which is the main reason, is that, and also for social engineering purposes to help the planet, help the people, come here usually often as a fragment, but also they come here whole. And that's usually when you're asking for problems, because if you can't cloak yourself and you can't hide, they're going to get you. So in my case, I knew going in they were going to get me, and I was going to be hijacked, abducted. So I came in 1947 as a male in the state of Nevada. I don't know who I was. I know I knew my hair color, but I don't know much else about myself. I do know that I was abducted at 7. They took a clone. It started from there. They fractured my soul. And then they started using that fragment to make new fragments and to either clone from or to make hybrids. But I don't know much about what they did. I do know that I have a memory of being a Hajayan, I wouldn't say a human hybrid, but a Hajayan hybrid who was capable of handling the Earth's atmosphere, that was the last version of me besides for this one. And actually, no, that was, let's see, if I'm Gen 8, because actually, it's interesting. I had a friend who's also a contactee, abductee, and she said that she had a dream that she woke up and she was seeing my name. She was seeing, Nathan and then 8 with it. And what that turned out to be is, like, after she told me, the following day, I woke up and I instantly had a voice telling me I'm generation 8. So essentially I'm the 8th alternate. But yeah, that individual was used to create several different altars. 2 are female, 5 are male, and then there's me. And then so one of them actually looks exactly like me. That clone is dead. That was what they were using to make me sick, towards right at the end. So it actually came down to myself and a clone of myself and a Hajayan hybrid, which was the alternate that became me and the clone. It's kind of confusing, but the one thing that I was able to do is that my higher self was able to get through to each one of the alternates, each one of the soul fragments, and render them useless to the military, because I was used by the United States military more so than I was the Dracos. It was more or less they created the whole mess that I was in, and then the military used me. They used my alternates. I believe there was an assassin in there as well. So I've been used and abused. Positive thing is that I don't have any active alters in any military or any extraterrestrial program. This is it. It's just me. Everyone else has been terminated. Do you have anything like that you could share where they executed any one of your alternates? Or have you ever had any ones that actually
Well,
broke free from the
from what I know is I have a very strong will. So when I signed up to the Super Soldier program, I actually did it by consent, actually conscious consent. It wasn't like a higher versions of me did a consent somewhere in my subconsciousness, and then I somehow ended up in that program without even consciously knowing. It was actually a conscious consent. I saw shit happen in Mars and other places, beings being killed and tortured, and I was like, how can I help? So I have like different lifetimes where I'm super soldier doing different things, and I don't remember actually being forced to do anything against my will. And the thing is about me getting forced from a soul level, for some reason, whenever I'm forced to do things I don't want to do, I'll do them just to survive, but I'll half-ass them. So it's kind of bad to make me do something against my will, because I'm not gonna do a good job. um, I know they tried to clone me. I think it was Area 52. I know they tried to clone me on a higher dimension. They tried to make hybrid babies with me, but I'm like, so I resist too much, and I think I took away the hybrid kids they made, and the cloning didn't work. So there were times where they tried to control me, like they tried to control me in MILABs, and I would fight them and beat them up. And I wouldn't let them do a lot of things that they wanted to do until I actually got out of it. Aliens got me out of there because they saw I was fighting too much. And apparently I got some other beings out too. Like I convinced them like, hey, you shouldn't be so submissive and stuff like that. Like don't let them do whatever they want to and stuff. So I actually got others to fight as well until like other beings saw that and they got them out as well. So I kind of have a thing for being a mischief when I'm forced to do something like against my will.
When you say they got him out, do you mean that that someone actually performed a soul rescue to get that fragment out?
Yeah, they got me out too. Aliens got me out of that place. And I actually on the physical, on this dimension, on the third dimension, I actually went to sleep for almost a year. Like I didn't get up from bed. I just went kind of like in depression, but there was no reason for me to be in depression. Like there was no changes, nothing happened in my life. For some reason, I just went to sleep for 1 year, and then after about a year, it was like nothing happened. Like, all of a sudden I was okay. And Men in Black told me that the reason I happened to me was because I was detoxing from all the emotional abuse that was happening in the MILABs after I got rescued. And it was affecting me in the third too. I was going through it in higher dimensions and in the third.
Yeah, I've been through a lot of that myself. When you say you went to bed for a year, went to sleep, you had a period of time where you, for the most part, were too depressed to get out of bed, and probably get out of bed just to do, your absolute necessities.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was going to school and I was going to college back then. So
So
yeah, I still had to do some things, but I basically wouldn't even study for it mostly. I would just remember whatever I studied in class, and that was it. Like, because most of the time I would just be sleeping. I just couldn't like I would be sitting in class and I would feel like I'm just leaving my body. Like I just want to fall asleep right here, right now. Like I had no energy to do anything.
right. Do you think they were actually doing anything to you besides for your depression? Because I've been through that too, where they literally zap your energy and make you sick. Have you had any of those types of issues?
No, it's just I would just wanted to sleep, sleep, and sleep, and I wanted to just it was like I was just tired and tired. It was like I was running marathons all the time, even though I wasn't running marathons.
Hey, how old were
Very
you when this
tired.
happened?
I was 15. No, uh, no, 17, I think. Yeah, 17.
Okay.
Yeah, I
See,
think 17.
have you had any ET abductions that you can recall? Because I know from my experience that even though these things are happening, it doesn't necessarily mean that you remember any type of abductions, because they are very good at keeping it from you. In my case, they gave me a clue, but they would never let me put two and two together. I mean, I had a strange memory of riding to the park as a child, and seeing these strange people all dressed. There was seven of them. They were all dressed in navy blue hoodies and navy blue pants, and they were all the same build and all the same height and very, very thin. And they had their hoods up, and they had what looked to be masks. One of them had a mask on, like a luchador mask, but the problem was is that the others didn't. And when the fragments came back, they were tall grays, but they had white chalky skin. They were completely not gray. They were, what I call them, whites. They weren't tall whites, but they had the large almond-shaped eyes. They also had a look to them that almost looked like a Halloween mask, like there was something else behind it. So if you had any experiences like that, you could share.
Had memories of MILABs. When I was a teenager, I used to feel very connected to Resident Evil, that movie. Not the zombie part, but the labs, the laboratory where they like clone Alice, and there's like a bunch of clones of her, and she's like running around the lab and they're killing her and experimenting on her. There was like a scene where she wakes up in the lab and there's like tubes in her and stuff like that. Like those scenes felt really familiar to me, and
Yeah,
I didn't really thought about it back then.
I've had the same situation going with me. It didn't start until recently, but because all this kind of came to a head and reared its ugly head at the end of August of this year. Up to that point, I was under the impression I was some kind of contactee that had had experiences since I was a childhood, but no abductions, and I wasn't part of any of these things that I've been hearing about. And when I heard about the SSP and super soldiers, I knew that super soldiers existed and that the government was lying about it. Now they admit that China has them, but we don't, and or they'll talk about it, but they don't really get into it. They'll talk about exoskeletons and different types of weapon systems that mount to your body, but nothing that goes inside you, and they don't talk about any of the really classified stuff. So anyway, yeah, I wasn't aware of it, and then just in the past few months, I've noticed that either when I'm listening to somebody's testimony, Like, for example, I don't remember the woman's name, but it was a Journey to the Truth podcast. Actually, it was from their conference. The past one just happened this past spring. And while I was listening to it, I was probably maybe 45 minutes in, maybe an hour at the most. I think the whole presentation might have been 90 minutes, but I don't remember. It was about halfway in though. And I just started to shake and I broke down and I started to cry. And there was a really bad feeling and a very familiar feeling of what she was talking about. And it struck a chord with me. Then recently, a friend of mine sent me a video. It was like a video advertisement for the Halo video game series. And I remember the first couple of scenes in the very beginning of it. It was a lot like what, excuse me. It was a lot like what you described. It was children with tubes sticking out of them, and they were in these. It was like a high-tech hospital room, like looked like almost on a spacecraft. But these kids are inside these enclosures on a bed, and they had things attached to their bodies, tubes sticking out of them. That triggered me pretty badly. Not so much. I didn't get emotional, but I felt repelled by it and I had to turn it off. I think it was actually, I just remember it was like the first 7 seconds of it, I had to turn it off. And then I went back and watched it. It sort of got toned down after that because it wasn't showing those scenes, but it was showing a lot of ridiculous looking combat scenes that just, and I looked at it and I just thought to myself, it's a disgusting form of propaganda by the government. But what I do know is that the Halo video game developers are copying people's testimony and are using those ideas to make the video game series from people that are recovering these memories. James Ring told me that when I met him, because I was curious as to why some of the things that because I was remembering names of programs. And when I looked them up, they were in the video games. Like Project Sigma, for example. If you look up Project Sigma, I know Project Sign. Yeah, Project Sign. The official explanation is that's for retrieving crashes, UAP crashes. And then Project Sigma is if you were at the crash scene and you'd have somebody who was a communicator, who was psychic, who could telepathically communicate with the extraterrestrials or use some form of technology to do so. So that's the surface explanation or definition for Project Sigma. But when I looked it up in regard to the SSP and super soldier programs, it's a very elite fighting corps of super soldiers that are highly advanced, fully telepathic, and part of naval intelligence. So that I do know I was part of that. So I was part of Sign, Sigma, the surrogate program, which has to do with implanting a soul fragment into a fetus at the 12th week after conception, where they keep a placeholder in society, which is, I guess, what you would be. And then there's also Project IBIS, which is something we'll get to in a moment. I just want to get to Project Surrogate real quick. Do you have any memories or anything that would connect you to Project Surrogate? Because if you're in these programs, and that would mean essentially that who you are right now, is a soul fragment. Generally, what it would mean is that you would be part of or actually involved in the Project Surrogate program, which is where they take a fracture or a fragment of the souls of one of your alters, whoever they're using, and they would create and they would actually make a clone of your soul, essentially creating a fragment and then implanting that into a fetus inside a mother's womb. Do you have any memories or anything like that you could share?
Well, this version of me was basically kind of put into my mom's womb because I'm a alien, basically. I'm an alien energy, so they found like the highest vibrational person they can find, and this body was genetically altered too to fit my soul a little bit more, so I'm not frying it too much, even though I am frying it even now. When I meditate, when I do like the lunate gun, sometimes I do fry this body, and I'm walking around very hyperactive. Like my brain is really hyperactive, but very exhausted at the same time. So I do spray my nervous system sometimes. But yeah, this body was genetically altered to fit me. But that happens to every single starseed that comes here, from what I know, because they're alien, they're high vibrational alien energy, and they need to be able to function with the body they have. If they don't function with the body they have, they start to have like mental, emotional problems, like when they start to be completely dysfunctional, like autism, ADHD, and stuff like that. That's when they're not compatible.
Well, that sounds like most people in the star seeds. I mean, we aren't exactly the healthiest stock of people. We're definitely not the most normal as far as psychiatry would be concerned, because there's a lot of things going on with us as a result of what's being done to us in other forms or other levels of our consciousness, plus what's being done to our physical bodies. Do you have any memories of the implantation itself?
No, because I actually came a little bit later. I had a more positive version of me come first, and then I came later. I'm not sure what age, getting like different information, but I replaced that more positive version of me because it couldn't handle it and it wanted to leave this place. It was too negative for it. So I'm a little bit a more negative soul fragment, I guess, soul version of myself.
Yeah.
I can handle this a little bit better, even though I even have hard time handling this reality.
Yeah, this isn't an easy reality to deal with, especially with the situation going on at the present moment. It isn't like it isn't like we're living in an Indian village and you have normal things to deal with. Like, you have to farm for food and raise your kids and just, hunt for meat and stuff like that. You're not doing that. You're literally in this high-tech Orwellian society that's completely disintegrating as because of what's being done to everyone. So, well, I guess I can get into a little bit about me. As far as the Project Surrogate goes, I've always had a memory from the very beginning of this very, very strange memory of being in a lab. But initially, it was in a white room, and I called it a white room memory because you couldn't see anything. It was a white haze, but I could make out like objects that were close to me as well as people. And I remember the interesting thing is that I remember even in the white room part of the memory, which was everything was in a white haze. I remember being told about the lifetime that I had to go into, and I wasn't happy with it. I was argumentative in this lab, which is what it turned out to be. And I eventually got into this machine, and the lid came down over top of me. It filled up full of light, and I could see a fetus at the 12th week of conception. And I went into that, and after that, it was just like a dream state from that point forward. But later, the memories came back in the form of a consecutive or a series of consecutive flashbacks. So, and each time they did, it got a little clearer. And then it just kind of stabilized for a period of time. And I never really knew the true context of it until recently. I did a hypnosis session, and then I was able to see the room completely crystal clear for the first time. And I was actually able to see what was outside that room, which was an underground installation of White Sands, New Mexico, a base that I've got memory fragments of being in. I've had lots of dreams where there was memory fragments inserted in, and this was done intentionally. But as far as the raw organic memories, the only thing that I have that I got independent of the Draco control was a memory of just recently being rolled through the facility, probably after an abduction during my childhood, because that's what it felt like. And it felt as if I was, it felt like I had a membrane over top of me, because it felt like a combination of a blanket and an oxygen mask, but I didn't have a mask over my face. I was looking straight up through a triangular hole cut in some type of a membrane-like material that was holding me down, but I was also paralyzed. I couldn't move. And I just remember like waking up and looking straight up to the ceiling. And the ceiling looked like it always did. In several sections of that underground facility, they had a type of metal framework up in the ceiling. They'd run various different things like piping and wiring and things like that. And I just remember being rolled down this giant hallway, and it felt like it had the open feel like an airport or a casino because it's so big. And then they're rolling me down a hallway, and there's two people with white lab coats on each side. So when I opened my eyes and I looked up, I saw their right arms and their right shoulder and some of their white lab coat. And I was looking straight up to the ceiling through this triangular hole. And there was that. And what's interesting about that one, I didn't feel like I was in a panic or anything. I just felt like out of it a bit, like I was regaining consciousness and in this place that I had been before. But they have a way to control your consciousness, because when I was abducted back when I was 6 years old, I remember floating off the bicycle and being enveloped in this warm feeling, like a comforter, like wrapped around me, and I was perfectly safe. I went from from like an incredible level of like anxiety, fear, and panic to just being completely comforted. And then everything faded to a light blue color and I lost consciousness. So anyway, yeah. So in other words, you have what I've got with some of the other stuff. You have the emotional memory, but you don't have the images, right? Is that what you're saying as far as the implantation goes with the surrogate program?
No, I don't really have that many memories.
Okay.
But I've never really connected to it, to be honest. I just know I walked in a little bit later. I think I was either I was still in the womb or I was just a very small baby. But yeah, I did walk in a little bit later. But I switched with another me. It's the same soul, just another more positive version of me.
Mhm.
Yeah, that version is somewhere on another reality, living life somewhere else. I couldn't handle it here.
I did an interview with Lauda Leon on the Typical Skeptic podcast this past Saturday. And when I brought up the memory of being rolled through the base and having that membrane over me, she said that she had a similar memory being in an artificial womb. Inside what felt like some type of a sac of some kind, almost like a synthetic uterus. And that tapped into something too, that I used to have these nightmares when I was a kid. I felt like I was inside something like that, like some kind of it was almost like, I don't know if you ever heard that story where it was like Jonah and the whale, where I've heard that stuff in Sunday school, where this guy was swallowed up by the whale and he spent this time in the whale's stomach and things. It was kind of like that feeling, if you can imagine it. But there was also, and I would have this repetitively, it would be like I was in something, almost like an artificial womb itself as well, or inside a tank or something, and I used to think that it was possibly a memory of when I was born, as I was coming through the birth canal, or just beforehand. I don't know. Have you ever had anything weird like that come through that you didn't really understand?
No, not that I know of. Yeah, you have a lot more memories of those
I got the bad one.
moments of your life.
Yeah, I got the but, okay, let's go down a couple other things. So now, let me ask you another question. This is a repetitive one. I asked you about abductions, and you were saying that. What were you saying again with that?
Abductions.
Yeah.
There's another version of me that was in MILABs that I know for sure.
What about this?
Have
you had any instances like that? Because I remember you saying something about MILABs, but you didn't get directly into it. I'm just curious because they usually do abduct you at least a couple of times when they put you in Project Surrogate. There's always something, but they really do a great job of hiding it. So is there anything weird that you haven't explored, or is there anything that you remember that you may think is an abduction?
From what I know, I haven't been touched physically by anyone because I'm being protected from that. My boyfriend actually has been taken physically. I don't know if he's gonna want me to talk about that, but he tapped into my energy, said that like he couldn't see anything where I was physically abducted either. But I feel like I'm being protected from being physically touched.
Do you have any idea who's doing that, or is it something you're able to do through your higher self?
I'm not sure who is protecting me, but I just know I am being protected from that.
Okay.
I just know I've been abducted in higher dimensions. Other versions of me have been abducted, but not me. Not the physical me.
Okay. Hey, what do you know about Project Ibis? Or I'm sorry, do you have something else you'd like to say?
No, I was gonna say, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, well, if you're not abducted, that's always a good thing because there's nothing good about it. And with me, I mean, and I don't know how many times I was taken. I was initially under the impression that I was taken once, but there's more to it than that. And I think there was some other abductions that took place before I was 6 years old. Because normally when they first get you, it seems, or when they first get you in each of the lifetimes, it usually comes around 6 or 7. It's usually 6 years old. It seems like to be the magic number for a lot of this. But I had a lot of night frights and things that took place, unusual things that happened to me around age 6 to 7. But there was stuff that happened earlier than that I really questioned. And I wonder if there was either non-physical abductions taking place or physical abductions that were done without a craft through a portal, something to that nature. I don't have any recollection of it, but I have the suspicion of it, and I know that there's things, there's markers, there's clues, there's events that took place that don't feel right, and usually there's something behind that. It's often filled in with screen memories, just like the screen memory I had of the abduction when I was 6. It was that I rode past these people who were standing to the left of me in a clearing next to a fallen tree. And even though I was scared and I got hit in the back of my head with energy that went down my spine, and then it was like a jolt of fear at the same time I got hit with it. What I remember initially, the first version of it was that I pedaled all the way home, and that was the end of it. I was scared, but I never said anything to anybody. In reality, I was taken with no missing time through some sort of time manipulation technology, which makes it really hard because if you don't have missing time and you don't have scars that you can find on your body, they could be in your back or someplace else, or they could have taken a tissue sample from you and healed you to the point where you don't have a scar. Because usually when they leave you with a scar, it's intentionally done so that you'll find it later. Those are the people that they want to talk about the experiences. Just like if you have missing time, if you're given missing time, it's usually because in almost every case that they want you to recognize that something took place. And in my case, they really covered it up, and there was no missing time, no scars that I immediately found. I do have a dimple on my back, someplace around my shoulder. I've suspected that as being a possible scar from an abduction. The problem is that when I got that information, it was through a Draco, which I guess I get into a little bit, but which has to do with Project Ibis. So I don't know if that's a dimple or it's an actual scar. It's difficult to say, because I've had people look and say, "Why do you have that strange indentation in your like the back of your shoulder?" And I never really gave it much thought. But then when I assumed that's what it was, of course, they're always there to fill your head full of nonsense that you can't validate. Anyway, do you you're familiar with Project Ibis, and we talked about it a little bit when we first talked on Zoom, which wasn't recorded. And you're familiar with the James Casbolt, Michael Prince stuff a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so would you like to talk about a little bit about what you know about that, or would you like me to just jump right into it?
Just jump right into it.
Okay. Well, this information is not anything that does not have to do with James Casbolt or Michael Prince. which is the same person. I believe James Casbolt is his alias that he used online, but his true name is Michael Prince. Is that correct or not? Because I haven't done a lot of research on him other than looking into what Ibis was, or at least what he said it was.
I think Michael Prince is the name they used in the military. He's remembering his fourth dimensional Martian self, where he's a commander, because they sometimes use Prince. They use these kind of names as kind of like a ranking thing,
Okay.
which is weird, but they have their weird ways of ranking things.
Well, yeah.
But, so he's remembering another version of him.
Okay. Yeah, because I wasn't really clear. Once I started looking into it, I didn't get too far into it because I was more interested in what other people were recalling on this, because there's different facets to Project Ibis. I don't know if he ever defined in his testimony what it was specifically. I remember him talking about Project Mannequin and so forth, but there's a lot of overlapping programs, and he referred to Ibis beginning in 1972. The Project Ibis, part of the portion of it that I'm aware of has to do with creating a false awakening, and Ibis would be a hijacking of Thoth, Project Ibis, that is. Thoth being a spiritual teacher, a pagan god spiritual teacher entity, and then what happens is they created, what they did is they engineered the New Age movement going all the way back, and this goes back before 72. Back in 2019, I had a psychic download and it was when I was under the control of the Dracos, and they knew that my higher self was attempting to wake me up, just like it had done in every one of the alternates. Their goal was to shut me down. So when other efforts didn't work, they saw that I was trying to go public in the best way I could, and I had to do it under their harassment. They would give me speech problems. I would have lots of brain fog and so forth. I would have not even psychosomatic manifestations. I would have programmed physical manifestations, such as having to clear my throat, swallowing air, and a lot of other things that would stop me. So when those things didn't work, they decided what they were going to do is they were going to give me this social media project to do, and then they're going to sabotage this. So it all kind of happened at the same time. And as I tried to go public, they gave me this project. And when I went public, the only thing that I did is I sent Rex Bear a series of emails, and he did that video where he read my email on his channel, and then he had a psychic experience. He had an implanted dreamscape, and of course that spooked him, and he wouldn't talk to me after that. He's been in denial about it, but it was evidence that they were tampering with me and affecting other people around me to try to prevent me from going public or actually gaining any kind of traction. But what they did in that case is they ensured that he made a video and then had a bad experience. So I was told that I was going to be doing the social media project. The goal, of course, was to create a situation where I would be sabotaged, and therefore I would stop. And when I didn't do that, it started to get violent. That's when that's when they tried to kill me. They made me, prior to me actually going through this, they had made me fatally sick with autonomic nervous system failure. And within a year later, they induced heart failure in me. So it was a way of keeping me from going public, because going public was how I was not just going to get help, but it was going to trigger me to waking up more. So they were trying to stop that. And eventually what happened was, and what happened was when things failed and they couldn't stop me, and I kept pushing forward, and I persevered despite everything that they did to me. It led to me getting into a situation, which I don't want to get into too much here. I've talked about it enough. I was able to burn silver cords that were connecting me to their supercomputer, their AI system, as well as an alternate that they were using to make me sick at White Sands. Right before I broke free from that, I had a Draco negotiator. Actually, I had a female Draco come to me first. this is the one that mentioned that I had a mark in the back of my, like between my shoulders or on my shoulder and my back, that according to them had to do with a scar, but I really don't know if that's actually accurate. But she said to me, she goes, "You're not happy with your treatment and the program that you're in." And I said, "Of course I'm not. Who would be?" And then they said, "Well, I can move you to a different program. Would you like that?" And at this point, I was ready to entertain anything that they were going to say, but not necessarily take it seriously or follow through. I wanted to see what they were going to do. So I said, "Okay, yeah, put me in this other program." Well, the next day, I'm going to the cardiologist office, and this really smooth talking Draco negotiator contacts me telepathically, and he tells me that they've got something that they can offer me that would make my life better. And he starts to go through the whole thing. And what he described to me is that I would be a social media influencer in the New Age movement, as well as a part of the disclosure movement as well. So I would be kind of a New Age type of person. I'm not sure. They didn't lay out what I would be talking about, whether it be just simply New Age stuff or it'd be something to do with the Super Soldier program or whatever. But I believe it was probably going to be a combination of all of it. And they told me that they would give me 20 good years of my life left. They would fix my health as much as they could. They would make me well off. They would stop the shadow banning. And this is where it gets interesting, because they literally promised me through the Department of Homeland Security, as well as other government agencies and big tech, that they would actually open the gates and allow me to talk instead of shadow banning my channel. And I've been heavily shadow banned, just like you have. I mean, how long have you been at this? I forgot what you said. You said about 2 years you've been doing videos?
No, I started, I think May last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I started my channel.
Yeah, so you've actually been shadow banned, not quite as much as me, because you've got about how many subscribers do you have?
1,100 on YouTube, and maybe I don't know how much on Rumble, like 100 something.
Which is it's
Rumble.
an accomplishment on Rumble, because they don't like these types of topics. I would upload a video on Rumble and get like 2 views in a month. So I know they're shadow banning there, and they're shadow banning on every one of the platforms that I've tried. That's the thing. People think it's not YouTube, then they're going to be able to put their information up. Well, I've been shadow banned by 2 different other video sharing websites. One, you have to actually pay to get your video promoted. And when I pay the fee, they still don't promote my video. It doesn't show up. There's, channels with barely any videos that were being, put up there before mine was, and mine was never put up. So yeah, they've been hitting me a little bit harder than you, but they don't like you either. I've noticed that. And your channel hasn't grown that much since I found it, because I found it probably maybe 6 months ago. I just kind of stumbled across it, and I don't remember how that happened, but I'm sure somebody's stumbling across mine every once in a while. Despite the shadow banning, they have to put it someplace. But somehow I found you, and somehow other people found me. But I'm still around 650 subscribers, and with 51 videos, I think, and a bunch of interviews now. But yeah, what it is that the social media gatekeepers take their direction from the Department of Homeland Security. So if they don't want your channel to grow or be seen, they can just put you on a list, and it doesn't matter if big tech knows why you're being shadow banned, which they usually don't. They just know that they have to do this on behalf of the government. You're a person of interest or a person of concern, and they put you on that list, and then nobody sees your videos and nobody finds your channel. And no matter what you do and where you go, they shut the doors, and you can't gain any kind of traction with promoting your material. So they were promising me to give me like just an open pathway, like an Ishmael, Perez type of treatment, where everybody would want to talk to me, because there's not just the shadow banning aspect of this. There's the subconscious psychic manipulation that takes place. And you mentioned as well that you were treated rudely by Carrie Cassidy and a few other people in the community, right? And so how many times did you reach out to try to find people just to listen to you?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting that apparently Carrie Cassidy and Miles Johnson, they do um filter out who is talking and who's not talking in their channel. That means they're filtering out a lot of information that could have been interesting on their channel, and for some reason they decide who they want to pick. um I messaged to Journey to the Truth what, like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. They still haven't replied to me. So everybody seems like they're kind of very selective of what kind of information goes out there. um I don't know, that doesn't seem like very fair to people, because sometimes there's like so many different realities, and sometimes people might remember things that might not work with the information that has already been given. But that doesn't mean that there's no something. There might be some parts where would trigger people to remember something, you never know. Even if they seem like their stories seem completely um unbelievable, there might be some truth in there. So I feel like any story should be put out there, no matter how unrealistic or silly it looks. I don't know.
Well,
That's my opinion.
you're absolutely right. And it seems like, it doesn't seem like it is. There's a lot of people out there that have stories that don't sound quite right. And these are often people that have real memories and experiences, but it's overlapped with screen memories, so false implanted memories. This is another aspect of Project IBIS. Project IBIS is essentially the hijacking of the human intuitive awakening due to the result of the reduction of the AI transdimensional planetary consciousness simulation, which is a resonant frequency broadcasted from Saturn, where the rings are used as a broadcasting dish containing rock, ice, and a crystalline material. And you can read the book, The Ringmakers of Saturn, and you'll see images from JPL. I think it's from the Cassini mission that NASA did, which they set to probe out there to Saturn, and they took pictures. And you can see these large drone-like vehicles. They're actually drones. They're tubular shaped. Some of them are different shape, but this has been remote viewed. I think it was a remote viewing group from Northern California. I don't know if their website's still up. I think it was Right Hemispheric Remote Viewing. And they worked with, is it the ESETI Ranch or the CSETI Ranch? I don't remember which, but it's, are you familiar with that place in Northern California at the foot of Mount Shasta?
No.
Okay, well,
I know about Mount Shasta, but I don't know about the group.
Well, it's a remote viewing group in Northern California. I don't know how big it is, but they remote viewed a lot of the extraterrestrial activity coming out of Mount Shasta. And there's a ranch there. Trying to think the guy's name, but he runs this ranch, and they have retreats. You can rent cabins, and what they do is they try to vector in the craft and have these experiences. And so they were remote viewing there. Now they remote viewed the rings as well, and found that they were drone vehicles, and they were actually dispersing material to create the rings. And then there's another piece of evidence with the Farsight Institute. When they remote viewed Iapetus, they did a documentary on the remote viewing Iapetus, and one of the remote viewers actually saw energy coming from Saturn's rings, but didn't know what it was, because there was a resort, an ancient resort that was built into a canyon wall. And there was pictures of it from one of the NASA space probe missions, where you could see these wraparound windows. It was a structure that was built into the side of the side of a canyon wall, and it had these wraparound windows. So when you looked out, all the different floors could look out and see the rings of Saturn. And it was referred to, what they saw as the most breathtaking sight in the solar system. But they didn't realize that these rings were artificial, and that the energy that they saw emanating from them was creating the planetary consciousness simulation. And this was I would say the first contactee, or the first individual that's in this, and also researcher, is Mr. David Icke. He did was it 2008, did it was called the Saturn Moon Matrix presentation. It was a multiple hour long presentation that he did where he talked about how the archons were using technology in Saturn to suppress our consciousness. Are you familiar with any of that?
I don't know about the rings, but I do know they do have a lot of technology that manipulates the mind on Saturn, that's for sure.
Right. Well, that's the big broadcasting center. And then they modulate it in a variety of ways, etheric implants and a variety of different types of ways of energetic means to modify the effects of it. This is how the ETs themselves are able to operate within the resonant field, is due to the implants, etheric implants, because they're not affected by it. Just like when we take implants out, we're able to get a certain degree of psychic ability back, but we're not able to become fully psychic. Part of that has to do with our body. Part of it has to do with the frequencies and so forth, and the never-ending assault from the implants and the AI that's at work here. So anyway, kind of getting into that. Kind of getting lost here, but anyway, yeah. So you have that situation, and then I basically, if you want to go back to the situation I had where I was confronted by super soldiers and so forth, plus the Draco negotiator, I told him no, that I wasn't going to do it, and they offered me a lot of nice things, but after they've destroyed my health, 48 years of my life, they've negatively affected the people around me and my family. They've hurt friends and brought people close to death around me, including myself. I was never going to take the deal. And I told them to shove it, at which time they said, get the F out of my face. And then they left. And then from there, it kind of went downhill because I burnt off the cords, and then I started getting attacked pretty viciously. As soon as I burnt off as soon as I removed the life force cord that was connecting me to the clone at White Sands, that's when this female voice came over. It sounded like a loudspeaker. It says, "Nathan, you did something very bad." And then I was threatened, and after that, and that led, of course, to my heart failure going away, because they were no longer able to do anything to me. And that clone that they had that they were using, they told me that I had 14 days to live before I separated from the cords. And I said, well, why 14 days? And they said, because we have a treaty with your race that you belong to, and we have to give them 14 days. And I said, well, what do you think? Think I'm going to break free from this? And before the 14 days are up? And he says, we've had a few escape, but we don't think it's going to be you. He kind of had a nonchalant way of answering that. And anyway, well, that's what I did, and the rest is history. And it's just been one attack after another. And I've been made sick, but I've been able to, to come back from it and protect myself to a certain degree. And that's what I'm working on now. But Project Ibis is really basically a global psychic psyop. It is what they're doing is they're using the New Age movement, which if I go back to the download I was talking about that I had in 2019 when I was under their control, they showed me aspects of Project Ibis. They showed me how they, going back to, I think it was the 50s or 60s, George Van Tassel purchased a piece of land in the state of Nevada, and there was a giant rock there, and became known as Giant Rock. And you can look this up on Wikipedia for those of you who are watching this. And Giant Rock was a ceremonial place. They built a room below Giant Rock it was like an underground room. It was literally underneath the rock. And if you go to the rock itself, I've seen pictures of it on Wikipedia. There's a plaque there that explains what it's all about. And I saw this image in my mind, and there was people standing around Giant Rock, and they were dressed in funny outfits like aliens and so forth. And they were trying to vector in a craft or have an experience. And they would meet there and do these ceremonies, more like just, channeling and stuff. And they were channeling the Ashtar command. And I was shown that, and how they were engineering an awakening. What I didn't know is that they were engineering a false awakening, that the real awakening was taking place despite their efforts. And what Project Ibis was designed to do is to create a counterfeit psychic intuitive awakening where people would be used, contactees, which are actually MILABs, what I call controlled MILABs, were being used or are being used to become modern day psychic prophets. We're using social media. Originally, there was no internet, so of course it was through books and magazines and stuff, and then they would have these little groups which only had a regional outreach. But the books and UFO magazines that ran these stories and also advertised the books back when I was a kid, and I would read about the stuff. That's how it started. And so they sold this to me as if this was an engineered awakening, when in fact it wasn't. It was the counterfeit awakening. And what they're doing is they're pumping in false information mixed with truth, and they're giving it out to a variety of different people that are under the Project IBIS umbrella. They're being controlled by it, and they're out there putting out information such as the solar flash, which keeps being rescheduled. There was a cosmic flash before 2000. It was talked about. It was channeled. It was talked about by a variety of people. And then you had the 2012 solar flash, which was supposed to come, which never did. That was channeled, and a lot of people were talking about it. Some people made money off the story. And now we're back to the rescheduling of the solar flash, which is now postponed and now is supposed to take place in 2024, according to people that are channeling information or reading books that no longer exist, or scrolls, or whatever the claim is. Now it's for 2024. We also have another exciting event that we're waiting on, which is the removal of the cabal. They're going to be sent to a planet in another galaxy where they're going to be completely banished and imprisoned there. And there's also a common story. We're going to get med beds. And so in other words, what they're talking about is there's going to be a purge of the evil people running our governments, and we're going to get technology. And Inky is returning as well. He's returning to give everybody a DNA upgrade, as well as the Neuralink brain chip, and that will all be connected to Skylink. And it's going to be a synthetic digital telepathic ascension of humanity. This is all programs and storylines that are being given to people at a psychic level, and they're being put into society to influence everyone, to create a confusing period of time where we're supposed to be waking up, we're supposed to be realizing what we're here for, and we're supposed to be doing something accordingly. In fact, what we're doing is essentially basically not doing anything. We're trapped in a state of confusion. We're fighting amongst ourselves as to which ET prophet is correct. And people are confused, and they're picking sides, and it's a divide and conquer strategy. If you take a look at the disclosure movement, it's full of people that who are infusing the New Age belief system, as well as channeled information from contactees under Project IBIS, into the mix of their disclosure. And the extraterrestrials are putting screen memories in that it matches with some of this channeled information that's out there. So you have all these different what you have is you have a series of things that are validations. So you have a series of validating information that actually cross-validate, which makes it very confusing as well, because any good lie, especially within any intelligence agencies, do it too. They will mix truth with lies, so that you will find things in there that are truthful, and then you have to debate with yourself or with someone else as to whether or not the rest of it's true. So in the case of these predictions, such as the cabal is going to be taking out by 2024, 2025. Now, everyone who's psychically tuned in will tell you that there's going to be an event in the near future that does, in fact, remove these extraterrestrials, and it does lead to a series of sweeping changes that kind of take a long period of time, but some of it happens quickly. We can see how the decline of the world's accelerated, especially since Trump's been out of office. Everything's just going to hell. But what they do is they'll mix intuitive hits into the story. So if you hear, okay, the cabal's going to be defeated, they're going to be run out of here, they're going to be shut down, that resonates with me. If you tell them there's an awakening coming and it's already here, and you can see evidence of it, but there's a bigger awakening coming, then that resonates. If you are like an aficionado of Elon Musk and you think what he's doing is great, it's going to help humanity, but you have some questions about, say, like, Neuralink, for example, then they're going to mix that into the mix and try to get you to accept this World Economic Forum program, which is called brain transparency, which is where they want to use a brain chip to monitor thought. And now, of course, they're going to be exempt from this, but we're not. And that's the kiss of death for humanity, because once they can monitor thought, they can arrest you for thought crimes, and then it's game over. There's no way you're going to get out of it. What they're doing is the negative ETs that are behind this Project Ibis hoax are conditioning the masses to accept digital telepathy and thought monitoring by the elites, so that it's just another version of the Draco system. This is what the Dracos and negative extraterrestrials that are controlled by AI, by their government, this is what they do to their own people. Although in this case, and this kind of ties back into the James Casbolt stuff, because he did talk about AI being used to kill off humanity. Would you like to talk about that a little bit from your perspective on how AI would be weaponized and used against us? And perhaps if you know anything about what James Casbolt talked about, if you could share that too, that would be great.
Well, what I feel about the chip that Elon Musk is making right now, what I feel when I'm like connecting to his energy, it feels like he's trying to do something positive. Like he does have a positive intention.
Are you referring
Like
to
he's
Elon?
being the information and the strive is being like the way he's trying to make positive change is being messed with. They're not giving him the best options, the best solutions for the problem we have here.
You're
So
referring to
that's
Elon
what
Musk,
it's being
right?
messed with. Huh?
You're referring to Elon Musk, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, just sort of to
that's
clarify.
what at least that's what I'm picking up on, that the solution, the way him solving the problems is being messed with. They're channeling information into him that is not really beneficial for humanity at this point.
What
I
specifically
don't
would you
really
say that is? Because for me, I can see two ways how he's being manipulated. One, by the financial elites, as far as electric cars are concerned, because we're using a battery type power source, which is not just impractical, it's not feasible to do this on a large scale due to the amount of environmental problems, the scarcity of rare earth minerals, and all of the problems, because the energy has to come from somewhere to charge the battery, and they're just going to use the same type of energy system we have: nuclear, wind. Well, solar and wind are pretty much worthless. They don't work. They don't produce enough energy and are not dependable. But you've got all that problem right there. So if you could actually, because the future is electric vehicles, but if you could take them and give them a type of 0-point energy source, something like that, or something that's maybe not quite as advanced, but something else, such as the magnetron fusion engine. But you look that up, you can look up magnetron fusion engine. If you still can find information on it, it's a real patent that was seized by the federal government because it threatened national security by taking us off the petrodollar. So they had to shelve that technology. But so you have that problem. Then on the other side, what you're talking about, you have the subconscious manipulation pulling Elon Musk in two different directions. It's exactly the same feeling that I had about him as well. He's being pulled in different directions. And one of the ways that he's being manipulated in towards the negative side is by thinking that we're going to go into the age of the Terminator, where AI literally becomes sentient and starts killing us. And the solution in his mind, which is obviously what they're using to weaponize what he's doing, is the idea that if we simply merge with AI, our problems will be solved and the threat will be neutralized. So what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like right now, Neuralink is not a very good idea because people still need to learn how to use their natural ways of doing things.
Exactly.
They haven't figured that out yet either. Telepathy can also be monitored. just natural telepathy. So we're kind of in a neural link already in a way, because natural telepathy there are technologies that can monitor every single person's thoughts and emotions and physical sensations already on Earth. So higher dimensions already know everything about humans they can possibly know. So we're already like in the open. Everything is being scanned, whatever we think and feel and stuff like that.
Yeah, would you agree
But
that a fully telepathic psychic society would have a much better chance of policing their government and preventing such abuses from taking place unless they obviously put their guard down? What are your thoughts on that? Because if you look at the way society is with all the corruption that we have, and you look at it and you say to yourself, well, what if we could police the government and each other? What if we could read each other's intentions? What if we could remote view what's at government facilities? And what if everybody could do it? So they couldn't keep secrets. And the only way to do so would be through technology. Do you think we'd have a better chance? Because right now we're starting at like zero. Literally, we're bound to five senses for the most part. And what we do have is either controlled psychic abilities or manipulated ones where you're constantly under assault. If you're not under the control of the AI system, then you're rogue, and of course you're under the assault of it. So what do you think?
in the future, people are gonna start to become more psychic. It's just we're just at the beginning stages right now. People are still like, from what I'm looking online, 99% of people are still kind of like, you could put this information right in front of their face and they're gonna turn away. Like, most people are not interested in this. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to know about it. But as this energy becomes more and more stronger of like this reality, this information, they're not going to be able to turn away from it even if they want to, because on a subconscious level, there's still going to be that energy is still going to be affecting them. So right now, people are interested in a lot of other things that they probably should not be interested in, because it does nothing for them. It's kind of, it has the information that they have on the internet right now, most of it has really no value.
But
um
just look at any one of your social, well, what do you call it, your ISP homepages, and you look at it, it's mostly fear and consumption. If they're not pushing a war and they're using fear for political purposes. They're pushing, toxic fast food. They're pushing just very unhealthy lifestyles, and ultimately mental illness and physical illness is what they do. And a lot of bread and circus, which would be your sports and entertainment.
True, true. But at the moment, they think that our information is not valuable, what we're talking about, because it's another reality, another dimension. They think it has nothing to do with them. But as they start waking up, they're going to start realizing that it has a lot more to do with them than they thought before. And all pretty much every single thing in their life, if it's not on a mental, on an emotional level, they get influenced by everything that's happening outside of them all the time. so yeah,
Hey, are you
it's
familiar with
gonna
it?
get better.
It certainly will, but not after we go through a little bit more darkness. But um, are you familiar with a two-tier awakening process, that where you have the general population waking up a little bit, but more or less the secondary phase, and you have the people that are most susceptible to it are people like us. That is one thing that the Dracos did give me in that when I had my psychic download about the awakening, is that they showed a two-tier or a two-phase awakening process. And this is completely true. You have the reduction of the planetary consciousness simulation on one hand, and then you have those who are most susceptible to this, that are mostly, these are the people that are psychically inclined. You also have a small number of regular human souls that are native to this planet that aren't extraterrestrials, that are also waking up as well. But the question is, how many are actually waking up, and what are their purpose? I would assume that, no, I'm not going to assume. I guess I just shouldn't even bring it up. But what I'm saying is that there's a two-tier awakening process. And then when you look at that two-tier awakening process and you look at the Project Ibis program, which is to inject false information mixed with truth and essentially make the human intuitive awakening and the system or community of disclosure that's now moving forward with all of these suppressed memories that are coming forward. If you look at what they're doing, they're injecting falsehood in there to confuse people. So if you're part of the general population and you're not having these psychic events yet, and you're not waking up, but you do have an increase in intuition. In other words, you start to realize that, hey, there's something to this government corruption. And a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that, there's an off-world source for this. And for the most part, people are looking towards religion to understand that, because that's all they really have. That's what they're familiar with. So they're going to go back to the most familiar piece of information that they have, which is theology. So are you familiar with how it's like a two-tier awakening process? And what would you say? What do you think the negative aspects are going to be from all of this false information going out, which is part of Project Ibis, that actually makes the disclosure community look like a clown show to be? I mean, that's the best way to put it. It's literally clown world to some degree, especially if you're on the outside looking in and you don't understand what you're seeing. That some of this is so outrageous, but it's true, but there's an element of falsehood in there. What do you think? I mean, so just to go back and simplify, because I say too much, you got to.
From what I'm seeing is,
Sorry.
sorry.
That's
From what I'm seeing is, they have done this before. If you look at through history, in the past, that when people start waking up, of course, at the beginning, they use their abilities for more negative things. Right now, we have grown a lot and we're starting to use our abilities more for positive things. But if you remember back when they start, there was a time when they started waking up and they were burning women on the stake, right?
right.
So they basically stopped like a spiritual movement back then in a very harsh way. And discouraged a lot of people from waking up and practicing anything that has to do with spirituality.
Referring to the witch burnings, which didn't just take place in Salem, there was witch burnings in France and throughout Europe as well.
Yeah, they saw that threatens their power, and they took very radical approaches to it. Later on, we had the time when people start waking up as well during the hippie times. Even though we look at them now, we're kind of cringe, like, oh, they were not so positive. Well, for their time, they really did grow a lot really quickly.
Yeah, just wanted to
And then,
interrupt and inject something in there. Did you know that there was a psyop by the CIA going on during the anti-war protest in the 60s? It led to the creation of the Weather Underground, which was there to discredit anti-war activists by putting FBI agents into the Weather Underground. It basically, like they've done with the kidnapping scheme against the Gretchen Whitmer. She was the governor, still is the governor, unfortunately, of Michigan. And it's the same thing with January 6th as well. They put agents in there to provocateur an event. But they were doing that, and they were also pushing the use of LSD and a lot of other drugs, and they were actually fueling the whole counterculture movement, the CIA was, in an effort to basically, derail the anti-war movement around Vietnam, because people were being, drafted in this unjust war that was all based on a false flag. That was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. So yeah, so they were doing this in a conventional way in regard to the 60s movement. So I don't know if I'd call that like it's not an intuitive awakening, but it's more of a political, social renaissance or kind of an awakening that they completely squashed. Because as soon as the hippies went away, the same people that were talking about, peace and love went to be the executives of these big companies and then became part of the cabal. So they diffused that one pretty effectively. I'm sorry, I had to interrupt and throw that in. I apologize. Please forgive.
Yes, you're very correct. They use drugs to basically destroy that waking up process, because they they did start to wake up. They start to become more close to nature and start practicing more like higher vibrational thinking
Right.
and stuff like that. So it was an awakening movement in its own way. So if you look at it, the way things are moving, it's in waves. And now we have another awakening. That's another wave where people are waking up, more psychic things are coming in. People are learning how to use their psychic abilities. A lot of people are starting to do tarot and all of these like spiritual, playing around with spiritual things. And now people are a lot more afraid of drugs, like spiritual people are a lot more against drugs. So that's not going to work now. So they're going to try to come up with something else to try to slow down this wave as well. But no matter how many times they try to slow it down or stop a wave, there's going to be always a new wave, and every time that wave is going to be bigger. So it's just a battle of time. If it's not now, it's going to be tomorrow. If it's not tomorrow, it's going to be in a month. If it's not a month, it's going to be New Year. Like at some point, the entire planet's going to wake up. And the more they're like trying to suppress us, the stronger the wave is going to be next time. And the more intense the wave is going to be next time. So they're not going to stop anything anyways.
Well, I hear you laughing back there in between your words, so I can sense your enthusiasm. It's like the rebel spirit talking, saying, "Yeah, we're going to beat this because they can't dam up a river forever." And this is
Yep.
not just a river; it's an ocean that literally has a brick wall that's insulating, the elites and their eventual fate from everybody else being free and being happy for once, and not just the elites, but the negative extraterrestrials that are behind the elites and are behind this push for world government and human depopulation and soul enslavement and consciousness enslavement as well. I guess we ought to start wrapping this up. So what I wanted to say is if you'd like, we can do this maybe once a week and have a discussion and just kind of go over some things.
Oh, definitely. That would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask you about something else real quick, right before we wrap this up. Are you familiar with the angelic side of things and how that is affecting the planet?
Well, it's a very complex thing because just like in the lower dimensions, in the higher dimensions, there's positive and there's negative. Everybody has their own agenda, their own thoughts and ideas of how things should be. So it really depends on who you're looking at. Um, the more positive angels, the more negative angels, the demons, whoever you're looking at.
Well, what I found out about myself and about a lot of other people that I've met people too. There was Lotta. I have a friend from Avalon. I got two friends. One friend from Avalon, but there's two people connected to him that would fit in this category as well as having an angelic soul with angelic crystalline DNA, which isn't in the physical body, but in the etheric body or the energy body. And that is the big difference. And the reason that these programs that are essentially being run by the Draco top down, it's mainly the Draco from what I understand. And then you have a bunch of assisting races. So it's a conglomerate of extraterrestrial forces that are pulling this off. These are you can call lower density types of consciousness. They're psychic, but they're actually really below humanity as far as if you're going to look at it like a tier system of psychic abilities, where at the top of at the very highest tier, you would have those that were more unified with God. And then as you go to the lower ones, you go further and further away from God, to where you get to the point where once you get past this artificial construct of the simulation that we're in, you would go to what people were calling 4D or 5D. But these beings aren't going to go much further than that, because they're so far and removed from God's will that they're evil. And they have evil, self-serving intentions, and they do not respect humanity whatsoever. They see it as cattle or a natural resource. So from what I understand is, and this isn't everybody that's being hijacked, but the ones that are the biggest targets, and these are the ones that are considered to be appropriate to be made into the ultimate warriors, I like to call it, would be the angelic souls. And what I'm referring to isn't the theological version of an angel. Essentially, it's a highly advanced group that, in the way I kind of remembered and got from my higher self, and this wasn't from extraterrestrials because they would never tell me this, is that each type of species, each species that is not negative, I'm not referring to the negative ones, but all the ones that are unified with God's will or the Creator's will, there would be a hierarchy within that species, not a royal bloodline, but an angelic bloodline, one that has greater psychic abilities. And you're born into it. It's not something you could acquire or actually, work hard to achieve. And that their sole purpose of existing is to carry out God's will and to create order in the entire multiverse. They're not limited to any of these other levels of existence or actually levels of consciousness, meaning that when carrying out God's will, they could overcome any of the other groups of extraterrestrials, no matter how psychically adept they are and no matter what technology they have, because eventually when things have run their course in the never-ending story of the universe or the multiverse, there's an arbiter, there's somebody that steps in. It's to create a consciousness that wants to end the suffering and then utilizes these individuals, these angelics, to go into worlds that incarnate and to make change where it's necessary. That's where I found myself in. And that's why they're really abducting. That's the people they really want to go after. Do you ever, have you ever had any experiences or received any information or anything about yourself being one of those, or have you met anybody else that other than myself that has said that, or saw someone, other than Ishmael Perez talking about it?
That's the only thing I can really say about this. Where I was an angel and I had white wings. So
that could be something right there. But I mean, the fact that you've been put into these programs and used so much is another good example. When I did talk to James Rink, a little bit we did talk on the phone, he had mentioned the same thing to me, that he found out the same thing about himself. And it's been a common theme with a lot of people. And it doesn't matter, once they've got you and they've got you under control, it's hard to really understand this, but I mean, because I had questions as to why I was able to break free and why now. And the answer that I got is that this is a story where actually thoughts in this story in an infinite mind. Every timeline is a series of thoughts, and they can go in different directions like a flow chart. But yeah, so the reason that I was able to break away at 48 and break away from them wasn't because I could have. I mean, if the story was thought of a different way in the mind of God, I would have done it sooner. But it was meant to happen now, because really, what I understand to be reality is essentially we're self-aware and we're looking and we're aware of each other and we're aware of who we are. The problem, well, if you're outside the simulation, that is the case, but inside the simulation, it's much more difficult to ascertain what you are, where you are, and why you're here. But when you do get to the point where you understand what it is, you're literally just a thought in an infinite mind. You exist because you exist because that mind has memory. And once you come into existence, once you're thought of, you never ever die. you just simply transition from one body to the next, or one plane of existence to the next, or just one point of attention to the next, if you want to look at it that way. So so anyway, yeah, that answered my question, but it's a kind of a general way to answer it, or to get an answer. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think that it's a good possibility that you could fall into that category, besides for just what you talked about having a dream with wings? I mean, do you think there's something more to it that's possibly that has to do with you? Or how would you categorize yourself? In other words, what I'm asking you is do you see yourself as an angelic or an extraterrestrial soul? I think you're probably at the extraterrestrial soul level based on what you've talked about tonight. That doesn't mean you're not. It just means that.
Well, I do connect to higher levels too, because I did talk about on my channel about that I got from higher dimensional versions of me information that before there was existence, there was non-existence, and we can always go back to being non-existent until we decide to participate in creation all over again. Like we don't have to be part of creation if we don't want to. You choose to be existing, and not only existing, but actually creating something here. From what I understood about like the whole creation thing, so there are universes that I went to, because I was connecting to like dark universes where there's wars and stuff like that, and you basically have to fight for your existence. You have to suffer just to exist, right?
Wait, it's here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And there's some universes where I went to check them out in the astral, and they're actually universes where they don't need to do anything to exist. They just exist, and they don't create anything. They just are there on that universe. They don't want to participate in creation really much. They just kind of want to exist. Some souls go there just to take break from creation. Some kind of came into creation, and then they were like, oh, I don't want to create anything, so I'm just gonna exist and maybe go back to non-existence again. So it's kind of like every soul picks their own thing. Some get more how do I say this? They get more sucked into the creation, and they participate a lot more, to a point where they get into wars and stuff like that, and into arguments. And because whenever you're creating, there's always it's going to be some kind of problem, something to solve, because for you to know what you want to create, you need to know what you don't want. You need to have a contrast to be able to create something.
Exactly.
So there's always going to be negativity whenever you're participating in creation.
Right. There has to be an opposing force for activity to take place, for action to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. That's exactly what I got as well.
I've had dreams where I had white wings. So yeah, some people experience war just to know what they don't want, and to create something different that's not war. So it's part of creation.
Well,
Everything that
I just wanted to pay you a compliment real quick, because I watched Linda Moulton Howe on the Earth Files podcast before, asked this more than one time as to why there would, she would ask she would ask about the nature of reality, and the people that she would ask are the people that are allowed to speak in this community. And these are people that have been either on television or have been handed around in the circles of different investigators that only handle a controlled information stream, like Linda Moulton Howe. She will only go so far with it. And you answered the question that she'd asked several people that I've seen much, much better than they did, by the way. So I wanted to just to let you know. And that's one of the problems with the Project IBIS control system is that the people that have often the people with the most to offer, this isn't always the case, but the people who have the most to offer to the discussion are never allowed to be heard and are never allowed to speak. I know you agree with that too.
Yeah, definitely. There is something going on there because I'm seeing it. Like I thought I would be welcome pretty much anywhere I go, but it doesn't seem that it's gonna be that easy.
Well, what needs to happen is those of us who are become pariahs or outcasts of this community, this disclosure community, have to band together and start networking together and put your guard down and put some trust in those, because usually people that they're keeping out of the discussion are usually the ones that are here to do something more important than the ones who are allowed to speak. I'm not being egotistical when I say that, but it's the way the ETs and the military that is behind all of this censorship and behind the suppression of consciousness. They're the ones that don't want people like us to be speaking and being heard. That's why they come after our channel. That's why you're shadow banned. That's why they take your likes down. That's why they take your comments down. That's why they limit your reach. And that's why after you really start
listen.
mental, I'm sorry, what?
They even listen to my phone too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just did yesterday. It was yesterday. It was Wednesday. So today's Thursday. Yeah. So Wednesday, yesterday, I was with this person and we did about a 2.5 hour energy work session where he was working on me, and we started with a counseling session, and then we finished with the energy work, and it all went very, very good, and it was very positive. And we had no issues, no glitches. I mean, right now, this is no problems with Zoom, which is very unusual. They're just giving us a false sense of security. But the very next day, the very next day, or actually maybe it wasn't. No, it was it was yesterday. It was after my session. I got on the phone with a friend of mine, the guy that I often bring these subjects up to, and that's where I get the sound effects. And I had loud screeching sounds on my phone. I didn't even have to bring up his name or even talk about it. We were talking about regular things, and I started to hear the loud screeching and the sound effects. So they were sending.
Yeah, they sometimes listen, and that's how you know it, because their program, it seems, it's amazing to me with the amount of money they have. They still have these like technological issues where you could just find out that they're listening. But I psychically could even feel them whenever they're listening. I can feel their energy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can feel them listening to you. You can just sense it, plus, just by common sense, if they're going to go through all that trouble, they're listening to everything. And that's why I tell people who are trying to hide in any way they can with IPNs and stuff, or what do they call it? No, it's a VPN. I think I said that right. But anyway, they go through all this trouble to avoid being heard and avoid detection. But in they're paranoid. The problem is that it doesn't matter what level of encryption you use. They have ways of getting around that. It's not that they're decrypting something, but they're using psychic abilities and transdimensional systems. So they know what you're thinking. They don't need to listen to your email necessarily. When they do stuff like that, it's to send you a message. And sometimes you get interference here on Zoom, and it's not the NSA doing it. It's the ETs or technology that interfaces with the collective consciousness that is able to actually alter things and cause problems. So anyway, I guess we ought to wrap this up. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we go?
No, I think we covered pretty good subjects today. Pretty good information. We got out.
I think it went pretty well.
Hopefully, hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have something a little more structured and a little more to the point. It wasn't just, today was kind of a free form thing. We're just feeling each other out and getting the feel of this whole thing. So anyway, guys, we'll see you next time, and take care and be safe.